Welcome to our April 20th Zoom meeting for Anchorage Rotary. Welcome to our mayoral candidates, Mr. David Bronson and Mr. Forrest Dunbar. Welcome club members, fellow Rotarians, and guests. A quick note for the meeting, the chat has been disabled, and for best results, please select speaker view. You do this by clicking view in the right-hand top corner of your screen. For those unfamiliar with our club, Rotary is a network of neighbors, friends, leaders, and problem solvers who see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe and in our communities. Our Anchorage Club, often referred to as the Downtown Club, has supported and contributed to projects such as the Memorial for Victims of Violent Crimes at Hostetler Park, the ski jumps on Hillside, the Teen Underground, and Rotary Cares for Kids, a program that provides backpacks to children in foster care. But if you ask me, some of the best part is the fellowship. If you'd like to learn more about our club, please contact us through our website. And now, following in one of our traditions, we have a thought of the day from Matt Clayman, if he is on. Or how about Paul McGuire?
Thank you, President Tracy. As I looked around the screen, I see all the wonderful people joined here today. I know that each and every one of you have different things to be thankful for, but I think one thing we can all agree and be thankful for is short invocations at Rotary. Amen.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate that. Lindsay Hobson has our notify button.
Yes, thank you, President Tracy, fellow Rotarians. My name is Lindsay Hobson. I am the Director of Corporate Resources and Communications at NSTAR Natural Gas Company. April is Safe Digging Month. It has been recognized in Anchorage, as well as the Kenai Peninsula and the Valley. And basically, we just really want to, with this warmer weather, remind folks that if you have an outdoor project that calls for digging or disturbing the ground, to please call 811 2 days before digging for free utility locate. And this includes removing trees, installing deck posts, fence posts, mailboxes. So not just the traditional forms of digging, but anything that really disturbs the ground. And I want to quickly share a video, a 30-second video that incorporates this message, as well as NSTAR's, recognizes NSTAR's 60th anniversary this year of serving gas to Alaskans. So here we go. Can you all see this okay?
Yes.
60 years of delivering natural gas to Alaskans.
60 years of caring for the community.
60 years keeping people safe. I'm proud to work for NSTAR. Our work matters.
Help us keep Alaskans safe by calling 811.
Make sure to call 2 days before digging.
Or any project that disturbs the ground, like replacing your driveway or sidewalk or a rotten fence post.
Because here at NSTAR, all of our energy goes into our customer.
I'm sorry.
He's out there walking his dog.
Sorry about that. I got logged out of my computer. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. And just quick Rotary business this week is to remember to sign up for the tequila tasting. That is at Tequila 61, April 29th at 5 o'clock. And that is a fundraiser to support our Rotary Foundation. Also, remember this chat has been disabled for this meeting, and for best results, please select speaker view. And with that, I will turn it over to our moderator, Paul McGuire. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you very much, President Tracy. And again, a reminder, please set your view on Zoom to speaker view for enhanced viewing. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, fellow Rotarians and honored guests. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Anchorage Rotary Club. My name is Paul McGuire, and I will be serving as a moderator for this meeting. Rotarian Dave Myers will serve as the timekeeper. We have endeavored to make the time display available for all to see. If any difficulties arise, Mr. Myers will be keeping the clock manually and providing nonverbal cues for countdown. You will hear a chime 15 seconds before time runs out and again once time has expired. We will not take questions from the floor. All in attendance have been muted. Thank you. And the chat function disabled. Thank you. All questions have been submitted by Anchorage Rotary Club members and will be asked of both candidates. Each candidate shall have 1 minute to answer. Each candidate will have 3 minutes for opening remarks. There will be a series of yes, no, thumbs up or down questions. Each candidate will have the opportunity to ask the other 3 questions. Time limits are 1 minute to ask the question and 1 minute for the response. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for closing remarks at the end of the program. We held a coin toss, which was witnessed, and it was won by Mr. Dunbar. So Mr. Dunbar will lead things off with your opening remarks. You have 3 minutes, Mr. Dunbar.
Well, thank you, Paul. Thank you to the Anchorage Rotary Club, Club President Tracy Hartung, Henry Penny, and the event moderators for organizing this event. It's good to see Mr. Bronson here too, after he was unable to come to the Alaska Black Caucus debate on Sunday night. For those who might not know me, my name is Forrest Dunbar, and I'm running for mayor to get us past this public health crisis and get our economy back on track. A little bit about me. I'm a lifelong Alaskan, originally from Eagle on the Yukon River and Cordova on Prince William Sound. My parents are Miriam, a former special education aide and librarian, and Roger, who worked for 30 years for Fish and Game. Growing up, I worked as a wildland firefighter, commercial fisherman, and stocked shelves at Fred Meyer. I know what it's like to put in a hard day's work, and I know how tough things are right now in our city. But I believe that brighter days are ahead. Some of you may know me from my work representing East Anchorage on the Assembly, or perhaps through my service in the Alaska Army National Guard. Since I was first elected in April of 2016, I've focused on jobs, quality of life, public safety, and homelessness. My campaign for mayor has been endorsed by the Anchorage Education Association, the AFL-CIO, the International Association of Firefighters, Local 1264, and dozens of community leaders like Senator Elvie Gray Jackson and Representative Calvin Schrage. I'm also honored to have been endorsed by my former opponents, Bill Falsey and George Martinez, and by Tariq Gales, whom I ran against in 2016 and who was later chair of Dunleavy for Alaska, as well as dozens of small business owners who helped my team create our 10-point plan for jobs and economic growth. Together, we are building a coalition of the reasonable, people who want us to turn away from divisive rhetoric and extremism and get back to delivering core public services. And my team, my supporters, and I know that we've developed the strongest plan to reinvigorate Anchorage's economy and the broadest coalition to make that plan a reality. I'm running for mayor because I want to make Anchorage an even better place to live. Anchorage should be an exciting city. We have advantages few other cities can claim, including a world-class park and trail system, a deep indigenous history, and a diverse, rising generation of Alaskans ready to contribute. My opponent and I have starkly different views on what the future of Anchorage looks like, and my campaign is offering a far more positive and fact-based vision, including the 10-point plan, business-backed plan for jobs and economic growth. We can reclaim our future together if we hold on to the idea that Anchorage's best days are still ahead of us. I'm honored to be here this afternoon, and I look forward to answering your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dunbar. Mr. Bronson, you will now have 3 minutes for your opening remarks.
Great, thank you, Anchorage Rotary, for this great opportunity. I really appreciate it. As a quick introduction, my name is Dave Bronson. I am running for mayor. About me a little bit, my wife Deb and I have been married for 36 years. We've lived here in Anchorage for 30 years. We've raised 2 very successful kids, and we intend on growing old and dying in this city. I'm a 24-year veteran of the Air Force, the Alaska Air National Guard, where I was a pilot and maintenance officer. I retired from the Guard in 2005 as a lieutenant colonel, and then just this last September, I retired from a 30-year career as a commercial pilot. I'm running for mayor because, like many of you, I think, I no longer recognize my city. We have vagrants living on our streets and in our parks. Crime is filling our streets and our neighborhoods. Our small businesses have been forced to close by local politicians. Our schools, our sports, our churches, and even our assembly has been closed to us. Too many of our local politicians insist on leading us down the wrong path. As mayor, I will work with our public-private partnerships to find real solutions to our vagrancy crisis. I will empower our police to finally get control of the crime that is, again, filling our streets and our neighborhoods. I will open all of our businesses. I will open completely our schools, our sports facilities, our churches without restrictions. We need to reopen our businesses and return all of our children to school. And this needs to be done sooner than later, as we are facing long-term damage to our economy and our children's education. Folks, Anchorage is at a decision point. We must choose between the path we are now on, a path that does not lead to prosperity and safe streets and neighborhoods, or a better path that leads us to the Anchorage we knew just a few years ago. We can make Anchorage better, but only if we choose to. We must choose between those who will govern us wisely and those who will not. But in the end, we have to choose. Anchorage needs a strong leader to bring it back to prosperity. I know how to build and lead teams, and it will take an exceptional team to restore Anchorage. I've led both small teams and large organizations, and I've worked under both great and not so great leaders, and I know the difference. Anchorage needs a leader. I believe I am that leader, and I hope I can earn your vote. Thank you very much for this great opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bronson. Now we have some questions from our audience. And Mr. Bronson, you will get the first question. A reminder, you will have 1 minute to answer.
Okay.
What is your highest priority upon becoming mayor?
Well, the highest priority is to deal with the vagrancy problem, which is a subset of the homeless problem. We've got to get people to end living on our streets, living problematically. It's both good for our business community and our small businesses in town, but it's also very good for the people who are living on the streets and, quite frankly, dying on the streets. It's not compassionate to allow people to freeze to death in the winter on our streets, or to fall into traffic on our slippery sidewalks and road edges as they beg for money. Civilized societies don't do that. And until we get the vagrancy issue fixed, as well as the overall homeless issue fixed, we're not going to stimulate the investment that we need to reinvigorate our town.
Thank you very much. Mr. Dunbar, what is your highest priority upon becoming mayor? A reminder, you have 1 minute.
Thank you, Paul. My highest priority will be to get our economy back on track this summer. That means quickly deploying federal aid. It means working with our small business community. It means getting our visitor economy going again. And we need to work with our state and federal partners to do that. We know that we need to be attracting more independent travelers this summer, but jobs and the economy are absolutely the top priority this summer. Everything else flows from that. It is true that we have a crisis that might emerge down at the Sullivan Arena if we don't take quick action to find housing solutions for the people that are there. So that is another top priority for the person that's going to become the mayor. We have 400 people in that facility. We have another 300 in other facilities. We have to find housing solutions for them to avoid a crisis. But again, I want a robust construction season. I want a good visitor economy. I want to kickstart our economy this summer.
Thank you very much. Our next question will be directed to Mr. Dunbar. Is there a need for new revenues or taxes to pay for any of the challenges facing the municipality? If so, how would you increase municipal revenues?
Well, that's a great question. And the good news is we have already adopted a number of new revenue measures over the last several years. So we recognize that our support from the state was falling. It went from 40% of the budget of the municipality to less than 1%. So we had to make ourselves more independent. And we did so. We passed a fuel tax. We passed an alcohol tax that people of Anchorage did. And we sold MLMP and took that money, put it into the municipal trust. That will generate revenue long into the future. So I don't think we actually need significant new revenue sources at this time. We have new revenue in effect. We also, of course, are going to receive this year and next year a significant amount of additional federal funds. The largest community conversation we need to have going forward is ways to shift things away from just over-reliance on residential property taxes. And that's one of the reasons we're currently talking about the stormwater utility, which might go forward if the people of Anchorage buy into it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bronson, is there a need for new revenues or taxes to pay for any of the challenges facing the municipality? If so, how would you increase municipal revenues?
No, there is not. I'm not considering any new taxes. And quite frankly, we have a spending problem, not a revenue generation problem. The last several years, the spending within this city, which drives the, since we have a balanced budget requirement, it's the spending which is driving the property taxes, which is causing especially the elderly to get kicked out of their homes because they can't afford the property taxes. We need to, and my plan is, we need to right-size government, make government do what it's supposed to do and do it very well. But quite frankly, it needs to get smaller and it needs to do what it does very well.
Thank you. Our next question is directed to Mr. Bronson. What do you see as the two top areas of revitalization for Anchorage and why? For instance, mixed-use development, Port of Alaska, downtown improvements, Ship Creek development.
Well, certainly it's all the above. We've been driven into a financial crisis here, and we need to deal with all of those issues. But first and foremost, we need to get downtown to a point where it is thriving, where it is vibrant, and it is the center of our city, and not just a failing component or district in our city. By doing that, or to do that, we need to get our vagrants off the street so the investors will come in and invest in the properties that we need to redevelop downtown. Certainly the port is almost at a crisis point right now. We all know we're one earthquake away from a disaster which would mean we have to get our food shipped in through Seward, which would drive up the cost of food. So the port needs to be dealt with. It's very complex. It is fixable, and we simply need to execute on both those.
Thank you. Mr. Dunbar, what do you see as the two top areas of revitalization for Anchorage and why? For instance, mixed-use development, Port of Alaska, downtown improvements, Ship Creek development.
Well, thank you. I think the top issue for revitalization of Anchorage is affordable housing. I served on the AEDC Live, Work, Play Housing Subcommittee, and we helped bring forward the accessory dwelling unit ordinance, the mother-in-law apartments. But as you mentioned, there are things like mixed-use development that can further make housing affordable. We need to make sure that our planning and permitting, our building department has that customer service mindset where they're getting to yes and they're working with our private sector partners. Downtown revitalization absolutely is crucial, and that will involve changing the pedestrian facilities. I have said a number of times that I want to explore changing 4th Avenue into a pedestrian promenade. We've seen it be remarkably successful in other cities. You work with the business community, you turn it into a place where people can walk and feel safe. And then the last point, as was mentioned, the port, absolutely. We have right now the petroleum and cement terminal going forward. The next step is the plan of finance. That will be a crucial construction project and a crucial lifeline for goods and goods.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Dunbar, you may now ask Mr. Bronson a question. You will have 1 minute to ask, and Mr. Bronson, you will have 1 minute to answer.
Well,
Mr. Dunbar.
Thank you. Mr. Bronson, at a Trump rally on October 3rd of last year, you claimed that the media and the deep state were attacking Donald Trump. Then on January 6th of this year, the same day as the Capitol riot, you posted on Facebook a claim that 4,000 more ballots have been discovered in Georgia's Fulton County. You also sent a private message that has since become public where you stated, quote, "I have to believe that there was enough cheating to sway the election for Biden. In short, Trump won." These kind of views are now referred to by many as the big lie. So my question is, given that Republican leadership all the way up to Mitch McConnell has acknowledged that there was no actual evidence of voter fraud at the time you wrote that, and there is no evidence of voter fraud now, why do you continue to spread misinformation about the 2020 election?
I do not continue to spread any information. I was merely reporting on the news reports that were coming out. The mainstream media is not universal in its assessment that there was not widespread voter fraud. But the thing to consider here, which is important, Joe Biden is my president. I respect that decision. And but the fact that on social media, I made comments about what was being reported by the mainstream media, I don't see that as problematic.
Thank you. Mr. Bronson, you may now ask Mr. Dunbar a question, the same time parameters.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Dunbar, majority of the dark money used in your attack independent expenditures are from out-of-state sources, not the good, hardworking people from Anchorage, like over 90% of my donors. Do you condone these negative attacks coming from Seattle and Washington, D.C.?
Thank you, Mr. Bronson. I know that you and Suzanne Downing have referred to this as my campaign, but I think it sort of, like your APOC report, sort of demonstrates either a lack of understanding of our campaign finance system or a deliberate attempt to mislead people. So there are two different kinds of campaigns, right? Campaign committees. There's the personal, the campaign that you and I have, where we get $1,000 from a PAC or $500 from an individual. And then there are independent expenditures, which we are not allowed to be connected to, which I have no connection to. I don't know where they get their funds. I don't know where they send things to. But I mean, you know about these IEs because one was registered for you yesterday at the Carousel Lounge. But there are two different kinds. There's the personal campaign where we received literally thousands of people have donated to our campaign. The vast majority of people here. The IEs, we're not connected to them. And you should stop implying that we are, because it is factually inaccurate.
Thank you, Mr. Dunbar. Now, answering without speaking. We will ask a series of thumbs up, thumb down questions. Your reply will be given as thumbs up or thumbs down. Your response should be immediate. The following questions relate to the April 6th general election. Proposition 1, area-wide facilities capital improvement bonds to fund improvements to include solar panels, public restrooms, and other projects. Up or down? Proposition 2, area-wide facilities capital improvement project bonds for Anchorage and Chugiak Eagle River Senior Centers and the Lusac Library. Up or down? Proposition 3, area-wide public safety and transit capital improvement bonds to make improvements to transit facilities, vehicles, and replacement of AFD emergency vehicles. Up or down? Proposition 4, area-wide police department information technology systems to acquire computer systems and in-car body cameras. Up or down? Proposition 5, Anchorage roads and drainage for road and storm drainage improvements. Up or down? Proposition 6, Anchorage parks and recreation bonds to renovate and rehabilitate area trails, parks, and playgrounds. Up or down? Proposition 7, Anchorage Fire Service area bonds to make AFD facility improvements and acquire a replacement ladder truck. Up or down? Proposition 8, Anchorage Metropolitan Police Service area bonds to replace fleet vehicles. Up or down? Gentlemen, thank you for playing our inaugural edition of Answering Without Speaking. Mr. Bronson, you will now have 1 minute to ask your second question of Mr. Dunbar.
Okay, Mr. Dunbar, according to a recent survey, a strong majority of the voters in Anchorage feel like the city's going in the wrong direction. Anchorage is in worse shape today because of the decisions, quite frankly, you have made. Why should voters trust you to suddenly make better decisions?
Mr. Dunbar, you have 1 minute for your response.
Thank you, sir. I was just waiting for the timer to change over there.
There you go.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's clear we've gone through a really tough year, really tough several years. We had an earthquake. We had a huge budget crisis at the state with massive cuts to municipal budgets. Right now, if there is an increase in property taxes at Anchorage, it won't be because of the municipality. Municipalities actually held things steady. It's because of Governor Dunleavy vetoing bond debt reimbursement. That is going to lead to an increase in property taxes. And of course, now we've been dealing with this pandemic. It's been a tremendous tremendously tough time. But the truth is, we've come through better than a lot of other communities. And there's a lot of groundwork that's been laid. For example, we've learned a lot down at the Sullivan Arena about how to more quickly move people from shelter into housing. And we have new federal funds to help. So I really believe that this coming year, Anchorage could have an economic boom if we invest in the right things, if we're an inclusive city, if we follow the 10-point plan for jobs and economic growth, and we can make real progress on public safety and homelessness as well.
Thank you. Mr. Dunbar, you now have 1 minute to ask your second question of Mr. Bronson.
Thank you. So my record on public safety is clear. I worked with my colleagues to put 100 more sworn police officers on the street. We also increased funding for non-sworn officers like evidence clerks and dispatchers, and created the mental health first responder program to take 7,000 behavioral crisis calls out of the APD stack so police could focus on property and violent crimes. We did all that in concert with police leadership, which cut 911 wait times in half and dropped property crime by 41%. At the same time, the APD and APDEA have worked very hard to build bridges with those they serve, particularly communities of color, through programs like Coffee with a Cop and Cops for Community. On April 10th, Mr. Bronson, you sent a letter to the APD in which you claimed that, quote, divisions of Black Lives Matter are violent and anti-American. I had a conversation with an experienced officer last week in which they said that that letter was a huge step backwards for APD. So my question is, do you think that letter helped advance that long, hard work done by our police and our community to build trust, or was it just intended to divide people and score political?
Thank you, Mr. Bronson. You have 1 minute to reply.
The thing that's striking here, Mr. Dunbar, if you have such great support from APDEA, why was there a near rebellion last Sunday of last week where they revolted against you, the rank and file revolted against you? And quite frankly, I'm trying to figure out why they ever would support you since you're a defund the police advocate. As to my statements about my complete statement on that you mentioned, yes, some divisions of Black Lives Matter are anti-American and are violent, and certainly their leadership are self-avowed Marxists. You support that. Some divisions of Black Lives Matter are not a problem, and I support them. And that's why if you look at, I believe the sentence just above it, I said Antifa is a terrorist organization, a domestic terrorist organization, and should be recognized as such. And I'm just trying to figure out why you don't condemn Antifa at large, and why you support Antifa supporting activities of your family members in Portland.
15 seconds.
Thank you very much. Mr. Dunbar, your next question.
I think actually,
how will you address crime in Anchorage? I'll give you 10 seconds extra. How will you address crime in Anchorage?
well, thank you for that question. It's absolutely of crucial importance. And as contrary to what Mr. Bronson just said, it's not true that I believe in defunding the police. In fact, quite the opposite. Over the last 5 years, we have increased the size of the police department. We've added 100 more sworn officers. We've increased evidence clerks and dispatchers, and we've done things to supplement the department as well. Because of that, over the last 3 years, we actually have seen a fall in basically every crime statistics every year. Crime peaked in about 2017, late 2017, early 2018, and it's been falling since, despite the sort of claims that Mr. Bronson is making. That being said, crime is still far too high. And we know that we need to be building trust with the community, engaging in community policing, and particularly focusing on things like domestic violence and sexual assault, which are still wildly disproportionately high here in Anchorage and in Alaska. So there's still a lot of work to do, but I think we have given the resources now to the APD to make real.
Thank you. Mr. Bronson, how will you address crime in Anchorage?
I will continue rebuilding the Anchorage Police Department, getting up to plus or minus 500 police officers that we need. I will empower, as I said in my opening statement, I will empower the police department to get control of the crime. There will be no get control of the crime that's quite frankly inundating our streets and our neighborhoods. We've had a hands-off policy from the last couple of mayor administrations. And we will end that. No one is immune from the law, no matter what their economic situation is. And quite frankly, living on the streets, being homeless is not a crime, but what they do on the streets sometimes is illegal, and no one is above the law. So we need to enforce our laws. We need to support our police officers. And certainly we don't need to send social workers out in tandem with our police officers to make social calls.
Thank you. Mr. Bronson, this question is first addressed to you. Homelessness has been an issue mayors have dealt with since George Sullivan's Kelso report in 1978. Please name 2 things you would implement as mayor that you believe would alleviate the current homelessness and affordable housing problem in Anchorage.
Well, those are 2 very distinct problems. The homeless, let's talk about the cost of affordable housing. The building in our city, the process it takes to get it permitted and approved has been, quite frankly, wrecked in the city due to the last several years of administration. The cost of housing in this city, there's a 30% premium on the cost of building in the city simply due to compliance with muni codes and fees. We've got to end that. We've got to completely reinvent how we permit and allow people to allow our builders to build the homes that we need so much in this city. And we will change that. Now, for the homeless issue itself, that's there's a vagrancy problem, which is a subset of the overall homeless problem. We have about 3,000 homeless, and it's growing. Those are by and large the unseen homeless. And then we have the vagrants or the visible homeless in our streets. And there's about 150 to 200 of them. Quite frankly, they need to be dealt with differently than the people who simply need rent assistance to stay in the apartment until they get the jobs back. Quite frankly, the job that Mr. Dunbar helped take away from them.
Thank you. Mr. Dunbar, homelessness has been an issue mayors have dealt with since the George Sullivan's Kelso report in 1978. Please name 2 things you would implement as mayor that you believe would alleviate the current homelessness and affordable housing problem in Anchorage.
Homelessness has been a longstanding problem in Anchorage, but we can make real progress in the years to come. We can significantly reduce the number of people in Anchorage experiencing homelessness. Now, the good news is we've learned a lot of lessons down at the Sullivan Arena. Sullivan Arena has to close by the end of September because of federal funds, FEMA funds that are running out. But we learned with a resource hub on site that we can quickly connect people to employment, to transitional housing, to long-term supportive housing, to treatment, and we can get to some of the root causes of homelessness. So 2 specific policies. Right now, Widener Properties and Rasmussen Foundation are purchasing the old Beans Cafe site, and the municipality, I'm sure, will work with them to create that kind of resource hub that, again, quickly connects people to those services. And then second, we have additional funds coming online now. We're getting between $7 and $8 million of additional funds. And then we have some funds from the alcohol tax. Those can be used for treatment, and those can be used for housing. We have a number of new housing programs that can get people off the street, stabilized, and significantly.
Thank you. Mr. Dunbar, you may now ask your 3rd and final question of Mr. Bronson. Reminder, 1 minute ask and response.
Thank you, Paul. So, Mr. Bronson, in an August interview on the Dan Fagan show, you stated that you were recruited to run by Jamie Allard, whose support for Nazi-themed license plates made national news. You are a leader of the Save Anchorage movement, which has had multiple members arrested in recent weeks, including a member who participated in the January 6th assault on our Capitol and openly celebrated that participation on the Save Anchorage Facebook page. Laura Reinbold, whose behavior has been described as unacceptable by Governor Dunleavy, who has refused to abide by basic COVID protocols and yesterday was stripped of her committee positions by her fellow Republicans, is one of your vocal supporters. In your own statements, you have referred to assembly members as crazies and recently ran a television ad in which you referred to these potential coworkers as idiots. My question is, are you going to cut ties with these extreme elements in our politics and change your offensive rhetoric towards our community leaders?
First, I am not a member of Save Anchorage. I do have great support on Save Anchorage, but as to the fact whether I'm a member of it is quite clear I'm not. Jamie Allard was one of many people who asked me to run for mayor and who I considered. And then Laura Reinbold, she can endorse, I didn't know she endorsed me, but they can endorse anyone they want and I'll accept that. And she's a member of, in good standing, of the Republican Party. So I'll take that. I think it's important to recognize here that in the previous question, and I've got to answer this, when I asked why should voters trust you, Mr. Dunbar, to suddenly make better decisions after months, if not years, of making really bad decisions, you failed to answer that question. I think that has bearing on this debate. And certainly as we go forward, if you anticipate being mayor, why are you going to start all of a sudden make good decisions for the people of this city?
Thank you. Mr. Dunbar, no, Mr. Bronson, you may now ask your third and final question of Mr. Dunbar. 1 minute ask and response.
And it keeps coming back to this wisdom of Mr. Dunbar's, is knowing what we now know about COVID-19, would you still vote nearly 20 times to shut down our city? And like the previous question that I had to ask twice, I hope you don't dodge this one. So would you still vote nearly 20 times to shut down our city and close the small businesses in our city?
We did not. And right now, there is 100% capacity at Anchorage's small businesses. It's just a mischaracterization of what we did over the last year. We were trying to protect the people of Anchorage from a deadly pandemic. There was a lockdown or a semi-lockdown in March, again in August. But since then, we have tried to reopen things as much as we could. And right now, people are back in school. Kids are back in school. Churches are open. Businesses are open. You keep saying open Anchorage as if we're not. Now, we do wear masks, that's true, because people are trying to protect each other. You know, we are trying to reduce the spread of this deadly virus. And we didn't make perfect decisions. Everybody saw through a glass darkly at the beginning of this crisis, but we have tried to get relief to people that need it most. We try to protect our citizens. We try to listen to public health professionals. We listen to epidemiologists. We listen to doctors. We work with the state and Dr. Zink. We do the things necessary. And because of that, Anchorage has one of the lowest hospitalization and death rates of city.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Bronson, your next question comes from our membership. How do you see Anchorage moving forward through COVID-19?
How does it move forward? Government has got to open up. Again, you know, right now, Mr. Dunbar says our schools are open. Well, if you want to go 5 days a week as a student, you have to do it on Zoom. And if you're in person, you can only do it 4 days a week. So no, we are not open in our schools, and the closure of our schools has dramatically hurt our children, and they need to be open. So that's a fact. As far as looking forward, again, open up our businesses, open up our schools, and with no restrictions. If someone wants to wear a mask, wear a mask. If you don't. From that perspective, I think people should have the right to choose for themselves, between them and their doctors, what's the best path forward. But we have to move out of this notion that we're somehow still in the middle of a pandemic. We're not. Our outcomes are no different than the valleys who never did shut down.
Thank you. Mr. Dunbar, how do you see Anchorage moving forward through COVID-19?
Well, first, I mean, we have to correct some of the disinformation there. The Valley's infection rate is 2 or 2.5 times what Anchorage is or has been in recent months. That's very unfortunate, but the infection continues to spread there much faster than it does here. The good news is, because of the vaccine, we are going to be able to move past this pandemic. I do believe that. You know, we already have crossed 50% of people in Anchorage have had at least one vaccine shot, and of people who are eligible. I think we can get to that 70% goal. And again, that's a goal, it's not a mandate, and we can still relax things like the mask mandate, even without reaching that 70% goal, if we see infection rates fall elsewhere. But I think that's our most realistic way out. I think we're going to get to it in a couple of months. I really do believe that. By the time the next mayor is sworn in, I think we'll be having a much better summer. Infection rates are going to fall, vaccination rates are going to rise, and we're going to get past what was truly a terrible year in Anchorage's history.
Thank you. Next question is addressed to Mr. Dunbar. The tax cap is an important tool in helping control taxes in Anchorage. Municipal bonds are one way around the cap. Municipal bonds are traditionally repaid over 20 to 30 years. Included in the recent bond issue are items which have a much shorter life than the bond amortization, consumables. Do you support this practice, and why or why not?
Thank you for the question, Paul. I'm a supporter of the tax cap, and it has been a useful way to match up the revenues we bring in with the spending. And speaking to what Mr. Bronson talked about, increasing the number of police to 500 and simultaneously having large tax breaks, we already spend 60% of our taxes on first responders and road maintenance. So that would mean massive cuts to other departments. To speak to your particular question, yes, I do support our current bond policy because interest rates are very low, and we've been able to use our bonds, which again are voted for. It's not a way around the tax cap. It's a plebiscite. I mean, the people of Anchorage vote on it and say, yes, this is something I want. I'm willing to invest in this. I'm willing to invest in the library. I'm willing to invest in this construction project. It's a crucial way that we've been able to continue to have construction in this city, even as state capital bonds, capital projects have fallen. So I do support our current bond.
Thank you. Mr. Bronson, the tax cap is an important tool in helping control taxes in Anchorage. Municipal bonds are one way around the cap. Municipal bonds are traditionally repaid over 20 to 30 years. Included in the recent bond issues are items which have a much shorter life than the bond amortization, consumables. Do you support this practice, and why or why not?
I do not support it. It's like taking a loan out to buy your groceries. Normal people don't do that kind of thing. We take loans out to finance where we live and what we drive, but we don't finance things that are disposable. And so while I support the tax cap, it's a great idea. We've found too many mechanisms to work our way around, like you mentioned, to get around it in your question. And we need to end that practice. We need very straightforward accountability to the taxpayer on how we bond and what we bond for, and quite frankly, how we pay it off.
Thank you. Mr. Bronson, this question is directed to you. The MOA recently adopted AO 2018-74, Community Workforce Agreement, which amends the MOA's purchasing requirements to strongly discourage non-union contractors from bidding MOA work in excess of $3.5 million, and AO 2019-130, Responsible Contractor Ordinance, which places the MOA in judging which contractors can and cannot bid MOA work. Do you support these ordinances?
I'm not familiar with the language of the ordinances. I do not support the notion, however, that the municipality picks the winners and losers in our society. Whether they're union or non-union is not the point. All competitors need to compete on a fair and level playing ground, but to the actual ordinances that you mentioned, I'm not going to comment because I haven't read them.
Thank you. Mr. Dunbar, the MOA recently adopted AO 2018-74, Community Workforce Agreement, which amends the MOA's purchasing requirements to strongly discourage non-union contractors from bidding MOA work in excess of $3.5 million, and AO 2019-130, Responsible Contractor Ordinance, which places the MOA in judging which contractors can and cannot bid MOA work. Do you support these ordinances?
I do, and I'll explain what both of them did. The responsible contractor ordinance basically stated if you had particularly egregious labor violations, if you had egregious violations of on-site safety, for example, or if you were mischaracterizing people as independent contractors when they actually were employees, then the municipal government would not give you a contract. I think that was a good practice, and the best contractors will easily meet those requirements. The second, community workforce agreements. Those did not say you have to be union or you have to be non-union. They did say we want certain things like apprenticeship utilization, which requires a certain number of folks be apprentices so we can increase our skilled workforce. It also had certain incentives for things like women, minorities, veterans, people that we want to be working in the trades. So I think it was a useful public policy tool. It didn't set things up union, non-union, but it tried to use municipal.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Dunbar, this next question is addressed to you. Is there anything you can do as mayor to replace the large businesses that have left Anchorage due to the downturn in oil and mining in Alaska?
This is a great question, and really it's the fundamental question for my generation of political leaders in Alaska. It is absolutely the case that resource development, the oil industry, will be a huge part of our economy for a long time to come, for the short, medium, even long term. But it is also the case that we need to diversify our economy, and there are things that we can do. We can invest in the outdoor and recreation economy, attract the missing middle of tourists and visitors to Anchorage. So we do a good job with tour groups. We do a good job with people who are very wealthy and maybe will go out to the Brooks Range or something like that. But there's a group of independent travelers that we're talking about with Visit Anchorage and with other businesses here that we can attract to Anchorage. Beyond that, we have to be in a knowledge-based economy. We have to be partnering with our university. If you can work from anywhere, you should work here. And to do that, we have to have affordable housing, and we have to have a unique quality of life. So people want to move here, set up new businesses, and remain here and raise it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bronson, is there anything you can do as mayor to replace the large businesses that have left Anchorage due to the downturn in oil and mining in Alaska?
Well, this is a statewide problem, if not a national problem. We've seen our new president attacking the oil industry, of which I am vehemently opposed to. And let's not forget, too, that who pays a big chunk of the bills in this state, and that's the oil companies as measured on the throughput through the pipeline. We need to support that to any degree that we can, because that's how we pay our bills these days. Quite frankly, for the last 45 years, that's how we've paid our bills. And we need to advance that. And certainly we need to advance tourism. That's very important. But tourism doesn't make up enough of the whole to make up the gap. We simply need to pump more oil, and that's what's good for our economy.
Thank you. Mr. Bronson, how would you balance climate change concerns and building a vibrant economy?
Well, first, a vibrant economy is built in no small part on how much government spends and subsidizes, that is. And quite frankly, I don't think the government should be in the business of subsidizing businesses, one business over another, to advance them in the marketplace, and that is carbon-based or environmental industry over other industries. We've got a lot of environmental friendly natural gas in our inlet, and we can create a lot of electricity, which a modern society needs through this natural gas, and we need to explore that to the full extent. And quite frankly, we need to stop looking for the new shiny object that's somehow going to save us from, quite frankly, something that may or not be a great problem.
Thank you. Mr. Dunbar, how would you balance climate change concerns and building a vibrant economy?
Well, climate change is real and it is a problem. We'll start with that. But I don't think that adapting to climate change and having a vibrant economy are in opposition to each other. In fact, if you look at the climate action plan, which I voted for, there are a number of different things in there that drive jobs, drive job growth. So we've done things like swap out LEDs and improve energy efficiency at the city. We've invested in weatherization. We used some CARES Act funds for that to get people back to work and also improve the weatherization in homes so that we lower energy costs. We're looking at major solar projects now. This is private industry that's looking into this. There's a project on Raspberry Road that's being discussed. There's also a project at the port that's being discussed that would create a microgrid, allowing more stable, more independent, and again, more affordable. So I think these things can absolutely be done. There are these new jobs of the future that lower energy costs for the people of Anchorage and reduce our carbon footprint and carbon output.
Thank you. Mr. Dunbar, please share your thoughts on the progress and management of the Port of Alaska Modernization Program.
Well, that's a great question, Paul. And honestly, we could probably talk about that for half an hour. It's been it's a huge challenge for the people of Alaska and people of Anchorage. It's the most important infrastructure project in Alaska. But the good news is it does seem to be going forward now. We have put forward the petroleum and cement terminal. It is on time, it's on budget. It should be completed by the end of next year. So now we're in conversations. The state, the federal government, the port user group, and I've been down there several times just in the last few weeks speaking with port users and talking about the plan of finance. So I think right now we are talking to our federal delegation. We are looking for federal dollars. And I think that will hopefully put forward a lot of that cost, but we're still going to probably have to do some form of user fee to keep the cargo terminal going forward. But we know it's in dire shape. We know we need to.
Thank you. Mr. Bronson, please share your thoughts on the progress and management of the Port of Alaska Modernization Program.
Well, this may be one area, ironically, where Mr. Dunbar and I have a little bit of agreement. We need to work with the major parties. Of course, on the south end, like he said, the petroleum and concrete dock project is well on its way, almost done, and that's a good thing. But we've got to get together with the major partners on the rest of the dock, Tote and Matson, and get them to come to an agreement on the plan of finance. That has to be done. The federal delegation is waiting for us to do that. They can't provide money for us until that plan is done, and it needs to be done sooner than later. My question is, Mr. Dunbar, you've been around for quite a few years in the assembly, and boy, things are still not going well. My plan is to bring a new set of eyes on this subject and enforce the issue, enforce the agreement between the users so that we come to a conclusion sooner than later, even as the lawsuit gets settled.
Mr. Dunbar, you led things off, so you now have 2 minutes for closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Paul, and thank you to everyone for inviting me here today. We all know that Anchorage faces tough challenges, but spring is here, summer is just around the corner, and we can ensure a strong recovery if we have experienced, fact-based leadership and actual plans to get us there. That kind of leadership and that kind of policymaking relies on truth. The truth is, over the last 5 years, I worked with my colleagues to increase funding and rebuild the police department, putting 100 more cops on the street. We expanded our non-sworn staff, reduced 911 wait times, and created the mental health first responder program. My opponent has not told the truth about my record on this score. The truth is, I worked with my colleagues to get tens of millions of dollars in relief to small businesses and directly into people's pockets through rental relief and mortgage relief and gift card programs that covered food, fuel, diapers, and other necessities, all while seeking input from the community and following federal guidelines. My opponent has lied about that too. The truth is the people of Anchorage want real solutions, not divisive rhetoric, not disinformation, and not someone who calls his prospective colleagues idiots in his advertisements. Nor do they want someone who buys into the conspiracy theories about the 2020 election or who will change Anchorage's reputation for being an inclusive city among the young people and investors who are deciding whether to come and stay here as they look to start families and businesses. I won't do that. I will help restore decorum and decency and bring forward actual policy change. I will work to improve customer service culture in municipal departments and get to yes for our builders. I have the experience and policy knowledge to get the job done. My campaign has a 10-point business-backed plan for jobs and economic growth and concrete proposals to improve public safety, reduce homelessness, and improve quality of life. Anchorage should be a livable, walkable, bikeable city. The beating economic part of the state with our best days still ahead of us. I know we can do it. We can move forward into the brighter future together. I appreciate you inviting me here today, and I would be honored to have your vote for mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bronson, you now have 2 minutes for closing remarks.
And thank you very much, Rotary. I really appreciate the opportunity. Once again, this won't take 2 minutes. Quite frankly, the distinction between Mr. Dunbar and myself, our worldview and how this government should be run in this city couldn't be more distinct, more different. We are literally at opposite ends of the spectrum. He believes in big government. I believe in limited, right-sized government. But on that, we can agree that this needs to, Anchorage needs and can be a great place to live, work, and play going forward. We do need that, and we all remember what it was like. Quite frankly, I'm fearful if Mr. Dunbar gets elected, because the path that we've been on for the last several years is a path we're going to stay on going forward if he is elected as mayor, and if the assembly members that are there, most of them stay in office. This path, as I've mentioned many times to many people, this path doesn't lead to anywhere except from Anchorage to Seattle to San Francisco to Los Angeles, and eventually to Venezuela. That is the clear distinction between he and I. I know where the city can go and what it can be. It's where it used to be when it was a great place to live, work, and play. I'll just close with one thing, and that's just, if you like the way the city's been going for the last 6 years, please vote for Mr. Dunbar. If you want to change in direction, if you want to go back to the way things were, certainly I am a choice that it couldn't be more different than Mr. Dunbar and I. I appreciate your time. This is a great venue, great questions, and I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, excuse me, on behalf of Anchorage Rotary Club, we extend our most heartfelt and sincere thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here today and inform us and entertain us with this forum. I will give you both a vote of a compliment in the sense that you did very well adhering to the time restraints. And most importantly, there was no interrupting. Thank you very much, gentlemen. That does it for me. I will send it back to President Tracy.
Mr. Bronson and Mr. Dunbar, thank you for being here today. In recognition of your participation in our forum, we will be making a donation in your name to the Children's Lunchbox. Also, thank you to Christy Bell, who is our program committee chair this month. And thank you to our speaker committee for planning this forum. They put a lot of effort in a short amount of time to put this together. Next week, we will be back here on Zoom. Our program is an introduction to the book, Wealth, Climate Change in the Arctic Initiatives, a travel memo. The author, Michaela Sith, will be joining us as our speaker. So we look forward to seeing you back here on Zoom next week. Thank you for everybody that participated today. Have an excellent week. Stay healthy, wash your hands, and we'll see you later.
Bye-bye.